Hey everyone, I'm Nicole.
And I'm Gabrielle.
And we are the hosts of the Spiritual Sisters podcast.
Join us every week as we discuss all the spiritual topics like astrology, mediumship, psychic insights, and so much more.
We are often joined by others we have met along our spiritual journey who are well versed in many of these areas.
Get ready for enlightening discussions and interviews and personal experiences that we hope will expand your mind and get you thinking outside of the box.
Whether you're a seasoned spiritual seeker or just beginning your spiritual journey, there's something here for everyone.
Check us out every Tuesday wherever you get your podcasts. See you then.
Bye!
Hi, beautiful souls, and welcome back to the Soul Ecosystem Podcast. I am your host, Anna Rising, and on this podcast, we discuss all things soul contracts, using a modality that combines Jewish mysticism, astrology, tarology, and numerology in order to calculate, using the date of your birth, what you were incarnated here to do. I have a very juicy soul contract for you guys today. So in order to kind of fill you guys in before we start diving into this person, you would need to know the backstory. I recently watched on Netflix Unknown Number, The High School Catfish, which is like a relaxed documentary about something that happened in Beale City, Michigan in 2020. So let's set the stage with two teens, Lauren Licari, who was 13 or 14 at the time, and her then boyfriend, Owen. They started to get really creepy, anonymous text messages. If you guys have already seen the documentary, you can just skip ahead. If you don't, I kind of want to really emphasize the gravity of what it is that these kids went through and how they came to find out who was sending them these repulsive text messages. They started to get text messages regularly. This was more than harassment. This was more than like stalking. This was like a constant outpour of really, really perverse negative text messages that were being sent through anonymous numbers to Lauren, who was 13 or 14, and her then boyfriend. It started to spill over into other people in their circle. They would start to get these text messages too, and it was absolutely horrible. It was sexual, it was violent, it was like more than bullying, and it was incredibly, incredibly difficult and heavy on Lauren because it touched on all of her insecurities. It's like the person that was sending them knew her on a deeper level. They knew her very well. They knew what she was insecure about, and they used it to their advantage. So I would recommend, if you haven't seen it already, to check it out, because I don't want to repeat the text messages that were being sent to this 13-year-old girl, because it's absolutely horrible. She was being told to unalive herself, that nobody cares about her, that nobody loves her, that her boyfriend doesn't love her. It was really tough stuff. I think I spent the entirety of those few episodes, I forget how long it is, I think I spent the entirety of that time just in shock, in a state of shock. And just like this deep sadness that somebody would do this to another person, that somebody would be so motivated to do this to another person. So over the course of, I think it was 2 years of these horrible texts, the school, the authorities were trying to find out who this was, and they couldn't for the life of them find the person. And if you don't want me to spoil this for you, go watch the show first, because I'm about to spoil it for you. Go watch the show first to find out who it was. But at the end of the show, they reveal that it was her mom. It was Lauren's mom, Kendra Licari, that was sending her these horrible, horrible text messages, talking about her body weight, talking about how skinny she was, about her chest, about her figure, about her unaliving herself. It was perverse. Like, this was just so disturbing. And I have to say, I was a little bit angry at the way that production kind of I don't want to say let her get away with it, but they were so easy on her. I guess they wanted her to keep talking, so they made it seem like they were on her side and they understood why she was doing the things she was doing. But It was so bad. Essentially, she blamed her childhood trauma on the fact that she did this to her child. And it's the craziest thing to watch this lady admit that she is the one that has been sending the text messages to Lauren, but not in like really concrete terms, and then start hugging her. Like, that was a little bit much for me. Okay. I'm like dissecting the whole entire documentary. So clearly, like, this person, Kendra, is not well. It's a sane person would not be sending these kind of text messages to their kids. And clearly there was a lot going on within that would make her resort to doing something like this. Because at first it kind of started off as a typical cyberbullying kind of thing, and then escalated really quickly into violent messages. So for 2 years, they were running around trying to figure out who is sending them these text messages. Like, Lauren was deeply disturbed by it. Owen was deeply disturbed by it. It was impacting their mental health. It was impacting their lives dramatically. They were paranoid. They started getting so stressed out. The police found out that it was Kendra by tracing all of the numbers that were used back to an app that would hide your phone number, then getting the IP address from it, then going to Verizon and looking at who has those IP addresses. Like, it wasn't the police that did that, actually. It was the FBI. The police sent it over to the FBI. They escalated it over to the FBI because there was nothing else that they could do. And that's when the FBI started digging around IP addresses, found out that they were all coming from Kendra's phone. Apparently, Kendra had a lot of phones. And apparently Kendra was in IT. She had lost her job, I think the same year that the text messages started, and made it her full-time job to send her child horrible texts. Her kid, Lauren, would walk into her mom's room and see her on the laptop, and her mom would say that she's working, but really, she was unemployed. She got fired from 2 jobs, I think both of her jobs, I think she had 2. And she used that time to figure out what kind of nasty text message she was going to send to her kid that day. And her boyfriend at the time, Lauren's boyfriend at the time, said that he thought it was really strange the way the mom acted towards him. And a lot of these text messages were centered around Lauren's boyfriend, her child's boyfriend. A lot of it was saying that he doesn't actually love her and that the sender, the mom, was going to steal him from her. It was really weird. She was acting like she was a teenager. She was acting like she was from her kid's school, like it was a teenage girl from her kid's school. And the boyfriend, Owen, he actually said that he thought it was really strange how she would cut his meat, and she seemed to like favor him like a lot, even over her daughter, especially when he was over. So he felt like there was a little bit of an obsession with him, but they didn't really get into that. He made that comment like one time in the documentary and they didn't really investigate it, which I thought was weird, because if the reason she did this was because she was obsessed with her daughter's boyfriend, you would think that they would kind of hone in on that. Kendra was eventually arrested in December of 2022, so 2 years after the text messages started. She pled guilty to stalking a minor and received a sentence of 19 months to 5 years and was released on parole in August of 2024. And some of the things I noticed watching that documentary is how dependent Lauren is on her mom. It's almost like she's looking at her mom to let her know when to breathe, like how to react. She was so almost in a haze, in shock after what her mom said to her. And it felt like she really wanted her mom to still be a part of her life. Like, she didn't disown her, which was heartbreaking in and of itself, because you can see how much she loves her mom and how deeply she cares for her, and how she can't wrap her brain around the fact that her mom would do something like this. So I think that paints a good enough picture of the kind of betrayal that happened, the kind of trauma that rippled through dozens of people, because everybody was affected by this. the parents of Owen, Lauren's dad, and then all of these teenage girls that were suspects, like all of these high school kids that were suspects of doing these horrible things, and they were being ridiculed in school, bullied in school for supposedly doing this, even though they didn't know who did it yet. And yeah, Kendra did not own up to it in the least. She didn't take responsibility for it. And that's another thing that was just mind-boggling to me, because she tried to excuse the fact that she sent however many text messages she was able to send through 2 years and making this her full-time job. She said that the first couple of text messages weren't from her, but she kind of like decided to pick up on it and start doing it, like to tag along or play off the idea of somebody cyberbullying her or something like that, which I don't believe for a second. I think it was her the entire time. And I don't see how that would make it better. I don't see how that makes it better if the first couple of text messages you won't take accountability for, but you're going to say, oh yeah, the rest are me though. Because remember, they got progressively worse. So watch the show if that's something that you're interested in. If you want to see the text, see the effect that it had on this small town. At the end of the show, it felt like the entire town was up in arms over what happened, and they were all so upset. Without further ado, let's take a look at Kendra Licari's soul contract to get an idea of who she is, of her personality, of her previous life karma, and why she did the thing that she did. Kendra Licari was born August 16th, 1980. So the two numbers we're immediately looking at in her soul contract are 8 and 16. I'm going to be heavily focusing on the negative side, on the downside of these numbers, because it is very clear that Kendra was not operating from the positive. She was not operating from her best self when she was doing these things. So when I'm honing in on the negative aspects of this, it's really to connect what Kendra did, what happened between 2020 and 2022, and Kendra's soul contract. I do want to not just focus on the negative. I want to give a little bit of the insight into the positive side of these numbers, because that way we can get an idea of who Kendra could be, of who she had the choice to be, had she chosen to heal her trauma, to not use her trauma as an excuse to traumatize her own child. She could have made the choice to do better. So the number 16 is of one who is kind, a real leader, the type of leader that doesn't just boss people around and is tyrannical, the type of leader that will take people by the hand and say, let's do this together. A lot of spiritual leaders have the energy of the number 16. 16s are searching for self-development, searching for transformation within themselves and in society. This kind of makes sense because Kendra was a basketball coach at the high school that Lauren attended. She was her basketball coach. There was this ability to lead. There was this ability to kind of take charge. And she was very involved in Lauren's life. She was the soccer mom. She would take her to all the practices, all the little leagues, you know? So 16 starts off as a person that is kind-hearted, open-hearted, willing to work on themselves, willing to work on themselves to help others. And when we look into the number 8, we see somebody that is very independent, has a lot of ambition. There's a desire for learning, there's a love for learning, a love for studying, and 8s are usually people that are very responsible. They're the ones that usually protect others, root for the underdog. They're very friendly, fearless, and they have the ability to help others in very stressful situations because they can act quickly and they can make decisions in high pressure situations. The downside of the number 16, the negative aspect of it, is that if somebody gets too attached to something spiritually or in a material sense, fate will step in and take it away, because these kind of people can get overly obsessed with something. This is where that ambition of hers likely started to go awry a little bit, because the dedication she had to sending her child all of these horrible messages, instead of having a full-time job, she made that her full-time job. If she could apply that kind of dedication into a higher pursuit, into a higher calling, she would have been very successful at it. She could have been very successful at it. Specifically for the number 16, there's a bit of karma tied into it that talks about if there is no development, if there's no transformation happening for people with the number 16, if they're kind of stuck in a rut and refusing to move, refusing to evolve, some karma is going to start to kick in order to force them to change. And this can happen via some very extreme manifestations. They may get a sudden urge to do very risky things. They may be flooded with apathy and start seeking things that give them a lot of adrenaline. The negative side of 16 also kind of speaks to having outbreaks of uncontrolled anger and aggression. So there is this propensity to get so fixated on one thing, so fixated on a certain way of life, that you get stuck in a rut, that you get very monotonous and there's no transformation happening, there's no evolvement happening, and no desire to develop yourself or change your point of view. So that's already kind of setting the stage for us a little bit about where it started to go wrong for Kendra. The number 8, the downside of it, is a little bit interesting too, because it specifically warns that this person has a propensity to interfere in love and justice, often making it worse. So this is the type of friend that will be all up in your business about your relationship, or all up in your business about your baby daddy needing to pay like taxes or child support or whatever, or things that aren't their business. They're going to make it their business, get super involved. And it says that if they cannot influence it, they're going to try to. They're going to try to influence it. And if they can't, they will get very butthurt about it, to the point that they might feel depressed about it. So this kind of shows us that she tried to be the third wheel in Lauren and Owen's relationship. And the fact that she wasn't able to do that may have sent her into a depression. Because think about how long those messages were being sent to the both of them. I do think that Lauren and Owen broke up a few times throughout those 2 years, but I think that they were together for the majority of it. So I can totally see how with this 8 energy, Kendra could have tried to get involved in their relationship, tried to influence it, tried to make it look the way she wanted it to. Think about the hyper-controlling mom that is probably planning your dates, or telling you guys when you should get engaged or when you should get married or this and that. If they can't influence it, they start to spiral. When they start to spiral, they start behaving aggressively. They have a tendency of starting fights, starting arguments, and get into this black and white mentality where everything can either be black or white. And this is stemming from her inability to really self-reflect and comprehend dynamics. So she kind of hashes that out by judging the people around. Some interesting aspects of this combination of the 8 and 16, is that there's the tendency to be a bit mischievous. It also speaks to her having a flair for acting and a very creative spirit. It's important for her to engage in creative activities, as the monotony of everyday life and routine can become unbearable. So I guess this whole cyberbullying her daughter is her way of taking on a creative project, so to speak. The acting part immediately reminded me of the fact that her sister spoke about how much Kendra loved attention as a kid. She's like, if you were talking to somebody and you had their attention, Kendra would immediately jump out from behind the scenes and she'd start dancing. She would start doing something that caused the attention to get shifted over to her. There was this need for attention that may have been so pathological that it resulted in her creating this stalker persona where she harasses her kid for 2 years. In her chart, there is some warning about possessing inflated ambition and a desire for fame. Her soul contract speaks to her well-developed intellect. She's very intelligent. She worked in IT. There's little opportunities to apply her mental abilities, and her contract warns that this can lead to physical and mental distress, including depression, headaches, neuroses, and insomnia. And I kid you not, it says if she follows a negative trajectory, she may resort to deceit, using her natural talent to manipulate others for dishonest gain. That kind of sends us in to her previous life, her karmic debt from a previous life. She has the numbers 1866 for it. And this is a karmic debt that's pretty serious because it's one of manipulation. It's one of taking somebody else's free will. So again, we're seeing themes of controlling behavior, really becoming obsessed with something to the point of going to whatever means necessary in order to get it. In her previous life, she loved somebody, and that love was not reciprocated. Her desire, her obsession to be together with this person was so strong that she used black magic or another sort of manipulation and took away somebody's will and freedom of choice. And that is a very serious karmic crime. In this life, how does this manifest? This manifests as a difficult childhood where a child feels like it does not get enough care or attention from parents or close loved ones, relatives, and they are very often raised by their grandmas or by their nannies or an aunt or an uncle away from their parents. Or they just don't see their parents very often because they work or travel a lot. So in adulthood, physical touch is very important to them, especially in relationships. So in adulthood, people with this karmic debt value physical contact a lot, physical touch a lot. That is how they receive love. They didn't get enough of that growing up, and they want to come back home, either hug or kiss their partner, like cuddle with them, sit on a couch and just be there in their presence, touching them. Any kind of third person, like third party, that starts kind of infiltrating the relationship or just like adding on to the relationship, like a baby, is met with hostility. So this is kind of alluding to her daughter's and her husband's relationship. And I am theorizing here that based on this, she may have went into like helicopter mom mode, hyper controlling mom mode in an effort to kind of butt into the relationship between the dad and the daughter. She may have seen Lauren as competition for the love of her husband and tried to like take her out of the equation by like keeping her as busy as possible, keeping her as controlled as possible. And that may have had a negative impact on her relationship with her husband. And that's likely why she kind of tried to be the third wheel in Lauren's relationship with her boyfriend. Her approach to life, her strategy, and the things that usually play out in her life. Her strategy is she acts and makes decisions from a lack of love. She attracts situations where she's disappointed and kind of self-prophesizes that she's inadequate, that she's unworthy, that she's not enough. And signs this is playing out is feeling unloved by her parents, unrequited love, dependency, emotional mood swings, apathy, depression, jealousy, fear of losing partner, fear of loving and being loved. Now, here is where we get into the deep crevices of her mind and her way of thinking. We're going to look into the subconscious programs that are running for her according to her soul contract chart. Subconscious programs are limiting beliefs or subconscious thought patterns that we adhere to throughout our incarnation that we agreed to take on in order to process, heal, and move on throughout this incarnation. The first subconscious program, when operating in the positive, is one called Inquisition, and it's a really beautiful program to have when it is operating from the positive, when you're operating from your heart space. This is a very open-hearted person that's open to new ideas, easily accepts changes that life can present. They usually are an out-of-box thinker, and they're not afraid to be who they are. They're not afraid to do what they love to do, even if other people judge them for it. They're incredibly persistent in their ambitions, their dreams, their beliefs and goals, and they're not easily influenced by other people. We see how this can have a negative effect when a person is operating from the negative, because the same drive, the same persistence, despite other people judging you, despite other people not approving of what it is that you do, gets a little bit dangerous, especially in Kendra's situation, because at some point she became so enamored with this. I don't know if I would call it an identity, because I don't know if she was drawn to this because she wanted to be somebody else. I don't know if that was her motivation. I think that everything that spilled out of her in her text messages to her daughter were coming from her. I think that these are things that she thought, and she was just mirroring them, projecting them onto her. And maybe there was some satisfaction in that because she knew that she could do that right, because she heard that all the time in her head. Either way, the negative side of this persistence of this program is that this person can start to show cold and tyrannical behavior towards others. And it speaks to a constant need to teach surrounding people about life, to teach your immediate circle about life, what life is like, how hard it is, like just teach them life lessons as if you're the expert, and to force them to live like you live, to force them to make the choices that you make. Along with that comes this belief that the only right way to do something is the way that you do it. This deprives your relatives and loved ones of independence and the right to express themselves, to be their own person, to be their own individual. And you could see that all over this show, guys. You could see that all over this documentary. There was such an enmeshment and attachment to Kendra in her daughter that she didn't really know how to act. She didn't really know who to be without her mom's presence. Like, you can almost see her waiting to see what she needs to be doing, to be told what to do. And this comes from trauma, guys. It's very possible that this kind of tyrannical behavior that is expressed through this subconscious program happened in childhood for Kendra, and now she's taking it out on her child in the same way. The next subconscious program we see in her chart, we started off with a pretty intense one already. The next one is called collusion. So when it's operating from the positive, this is a strength because you have the ability to influence people, influence their opinions, their actions, and you have a lot of organization skills. This would be a person that is great at campaigning. They would be a wonderful politician. And this person would be great at taking center stage, taking the central position, attracting other people, and kind of getting them going, motivating them to feel the same way that they feel about an issue. And thus, they may have a very good circle of friends. They have a very good network. So this is a very political subconscious program. I see a lot of politicians, a lot of people in media with this subconscious program. The downside of it is that the person can use their ability to talk their way out of situations, to influence others, to rebel or to disown somebody, to go against someone, to bully someone. So There's a very good ability, a very good talent of conspiring and planning things that are malicious, that have malicious intent. Again, on par with what Kendra did. As soon as I saw the next subconscious program that appears in her chart, I'm like, okay, this person was a narcissist. So we already touched a little bit on the trauma that she likely had from childhood, where she didn't get enough attention, didn't get enough love, and into adulthood, she's still seeking that. She's still seeking that. She still needs that validation, that attention in everything that she does. And narcissists, they don't care what kind of attention it is. They don't care if it's good attention. They don't care if it's bad attention. As long as your attention is on them and they feel like they matter, that's all that matters to them. Avarice is the next subconscious program. It has the numbers 14, 22, and 8. When operating from the positive, a person with this subconscious program is able to make grand gestures, not regret spending a lot of money on their loved ones or on themselves. This is a person that is very kind and warm-hearted and is very good at financial planning. They can save money if they need to. They can budget very well. But when it starts to have a negative trajectory, the avarice subconscious program is a little bit worrisome, because despite being naturally a kind and warm-hearted person, this is a person of extremes. So think of a pendulum. It's almost like this person is always operating from either one side or the other, never in the middle. So there could be extreme stinginess in regards to money, or there could be extreme spending. This type of person could be the person in the store with a coupon book trying to save money on toilet paper and just couponing everything, but then once they've saved up enough money, go and spend it on something very frivolous. It's like, because they hold themselves back so much, they decide that, okay, I deserve to go and have something nice now, and then they just go and blow it. The same thing happens on the emotional aspect, especially when it comes to close loved ones or children. The person can spoil someone with attention, affection, or love and show real sentimentality, but only for a short amount of time. Then it's like a switch has flipped and they're cold, they're distant, almost passive aggressive, and it's like a complete polar opposite. And these mood swings can cause loved ones to feel really confused and break their connection with this person and try to go back in their mind and be like, did I do something? Did I offend them somehow? And then start being very aware of everything they do in order not to set this person off. This is one of the big 3 subconscious programs that I see in narcissists. On a spiritual level, people with the subconscious program need to find a middle ground. They need to find a balance with finances, a balance with spending, a balance with emotional regulation. They need to do this in order to not damage their relationships with their loved ones, because this kind of instability can greatly impact relationships, especially with children. The next program kind of speaks to Kendra's ability to downplay what's actually happening, because it's the program of bragging. So this person is a very good storyteller. They know how to embellish, they know how to exaggerate and make a good story. Think of the relative that always speaks about this one childhood memory, and every time you hear it, it's a little bit more embellished, it's a little bit more exaggerated, and it's like, okay, that didn't really happen, but we get the point. This is that energy. This person loves to tell a beautiful story, and they're very easy to listen to. There's a gift of persuasion and a gift of charisma here, and they're able to kind of win over other people's favor in this way. However, the negative side of this is that the person often paints an unrealistic picture of what is actually happening. So if they say that, oh, they have this new car, this new house, and everything's going so well, it's very often that they're not speaking accurately or honestly about what's happening, what's actually going on, because they very well may be going bankrupt. They very well may be having financial issues and they're no longer like they're separating, getting a divorce, and they're not going to be telling you that, but they're going to make it out to be like everything's fine, everything's perfect. And we see this in Kendra and her husband's relationship because her husband had no idea that she had lost both of her jobs. And it was what, 2 years? He had no clue that for 2 years she wasn't actually working at all. The bills were not getting paid. And he says that it's because she usually handles all the finances, that he had no idea that things weren't getting taken care of around the house. But again, this is probably where the subconscious program bragging came into play, where Kendra made it out to be that everything was perfectly fine, her work was going fine, she still had the job at this place and still had the job at that place, and she was paying all the bills when in fact she was not. And the picture that was actually happening is a lot more dire than what she was painting it out to be. The next program we see in her chart is the Mother Wound program. And it speaks a little bit to, again, her childhood trauma. This lets us know that she has a mother wound, a big problem with her mom. And usually not just with her mom, but with the women in her life. This subconscious program means that she will experience a lot of conflicts with the women in her life throughout this incarnation. She may experience other women deceiving her, even framing her at work, refusing to cooperate with her, to work with her, extorting money from her, or even cheating her out of something. And this also speaks to problems with fertility, problems with bearing children, and getting pregnant, which makes me wonder if the reason why Kendra only has Lauren is because of fertility issues. I cannot speak to that, but there is indication of this in her chart. When this mother wound program is operating from the positive, this is somebody that has a very strong persona. And they're very bold and not afraid to take up space. This is somebody that is really logical, great with being careful to check all of their information, check all of the stats or the facts that they have before coming to a conclusion, before making a serious decision. They prefer to thoroughly fact check things before they come to a decision. They like to err on the side of caution and plan in advance, like have 5-year plans, 10-year plans to get out of difficult situations, to get out of debt on their own. And they usually don't rely on other people. So on the negative, we have somebody that's constantly kind of having one pulled over on them, right? And on the positive, we see someone that has taken control of their life, taken control of their destiny, and are very independent, decisive, and informed. By the way, I noticed that she doesn't have the prison program in her soul contract. So I think we can safely say that she was not meant to go to prison. I think the combination of all of these programs, of all of these things that she was dealing with on a conscious and subconscious level, have deteriorated so badly that she got to the point where she got. She made the choice that she made, but I don't think she was destined to choose this path. The last two subconscious programs that she has in her soul contract is the Imaginary Freedom program and the Sensitivity program. For Imaginary Freedom, in the positive, this is a person that has their own style. They're very bright. They're a sunshine of a human being, and they are not dependent on other people's perspectives, on other people's opinions. They are very creative and responsible. They know how to balance their work-life balance. And just by looking at them, you can see that they live differently. They don't need to follow outdated societal standards or norms. This is an individual that is completely free to be themselves. When operating from the negative, there's a lot of duplicity going on. There's a lot of two-facedness going on. A showy marriage where a couple may play the role of happy, successful family with a white picket fence, but behind closed doors, they're like roommates. There's a possibility of not really having a sense of direction in life because they don't know what they want. They are always motivated in their actions to please someone else instead of doing what's best for them, instead of doing what's best for themselves and doing what pleases them. And the next thing, the documentary kind of touched on this. Her sister mentioned that she used to be able to depend on Kendra for anything. If you called her and said, "Hey, I need help," she'll be there. She'll like get in the car and she'll drive over to you. Very dependable person. So I'm like, how are we going to reconcile these two different personas that we see? And here is where this has come in. They take on other people's work expecting benefits, expecting things in return. So there's this sense of doing things for others, being overly enthusiastic about doing things for others in exchange for pleasing them. It also speaks to problem with labor and with health. They may need to take medication regularly or have some dietary restrictions, but I think it's interesting that she has two different programs that kind of speak about infertility or problems with having children. The last subconscious program that she has in her soul contract is a perfect wrap up in order to understand Kendra Licari. In a positive light, having the sensitivity program means that you're a very kind, sensitive person. You empathize very greatly with others. You can feel their pain. You can very sincerely understand what they're going through. And there may be this fear of being misunderstood. A person with this program often sees feelings, expressing feelings, as weakness. So they can try to control their emotions very, very rigidly because they don't want to appear weak. Now we see this start to spill over into a negative trajectory when this person wants to hide their emotions, hide their weaknesses so deeply in an attempt to not be hurt that they start to seem like they are heartless or cruel. So think of this as somebody that has been hurt so deeply because they're so sensitive to it, immediately stonewalled themselves, like hardened their hearts, became super jaded, and they're like, you know what, I'm never gonna let anybody get this close to me again, in order to prevent themselves this kind of pain. So they kind of teach themselves to be heartless, to not react, to not have emotions, to not feel feelings. And eventually that's what it becomes. It becomes very difficult for this person to show love, to show affection in the way people usually show love and affection. What ends up happening is that they start nitpicking other people and they think that it's just teasing. They think that, oh, it's just like, I'm just playing around. They start like picking at their insecurities. And this immediately like calls to mind Mother Gothel from Tangled, how she was kind of putting Rapunzel down and she's like, I'm just kidding. And it's like, it's not a joke and it's not funny, but that's kind of how they treat themselves. That's kind of their inner talk. And maybe on some level, they're hoping that, oh, if they say it to you and then they say that it's a joke, that if somebody else says it to you, you're going to take it as a joke and it's not going to hurt that much. Maybe. But yeah, they also have this very unkind picking apart voice in themselves that does that to themselves, and thus it comes out and spills over and projects onto other people. For people with the sensitivity program, when it's manifesting negatively, there's usually an inability to enjoy life. They feel like they can't find pleasure in anything. And this kind of spirals into the person punishing themselves because of this inability to appreciate what they have, this inability to find joy, and inability to turn off that inner critic that they have. So that program is really one of the saddest programs for me, because that program, you start off being very empathetic, very sensitive. At somewhere along the way, you decide to shut it all down. It's like, nope, we gotta go into like survival mode. We gotta like take away all of this pain and make sure that nobody hurts us again. So we're gonna do the hurting. before we let somebody hurt us. It's like preemptive attack. So yeah, that is what I have for you guys for Kendra Licari and her soul contract. It was just riddled with wounds that spiraled into what it spiraled into. Like, it must have gotten so mutated that it turned into this. It turned into this whole thing where she was harassing her own daughter, where she was cyberbullying her own daughter, sending really inappropriate, damaging messages to her daughter, to her boyfriend, her daughter's boyfriend, even going as far as trying to pin it on one of the high school kids. Like, being, what would she have done if they would have been like, okay, it was this girl that did it, like, send her to juvie? Like, would she have been totally okay with somebody going to jail for something that she did? And we were able to get a little glimpse into her subconscious and what was going on for her there, especially karmically. Karmically, we immediately saw somebody that did not respect other people's boundaries, did not respect other people's individuality, ability to make a choice, their free will. This is somebody that was willing to go to whatever lengths they could in order to get what it is that they want. Kendra had the opportunity to not make a manipulative decision again this go around. And hopefully she has time before this incarnation is over to fix these mistakes that she's made, to fix the damage that she has done, the trauma that she has caused, learn from it, and grow from it so she doesn't have to repeat it in the next incarnation. But I think that that would require a lot of shadow work, a lot of transformation. That is all I have for you guys. Tune in next Friday for the next episode of the Soul Ecosystem Podcast. And if you were interested in getting your own soul contract, you can do so by going to my website at thesoulecosystem.com or my Etsy page or my Instagram. So let me know what you guys think. Let me know what you thought about this series, what your reaction was to everything. I knew it was her going into it because I saw a bunch of spoilers on the internet, but it was still shocking. It was still, like, I was gasping every time I read one of the messages that she sent to her daughter. It was insane. It was absolutely insane. Let me know what you guys thought. Let me know what you thought of her soul contract and if it makes sense. And I will see you guys next time. Thank you very much and have a wonderful weekend.